Donna, can we have a determination of quorum?
Sarah Shavilicek is absent. Larry Chesney,
Present?
Jim Barnes,
Here?
Thomas Bruce,
Here.
Francine Donchik,
Here.
Philip Haran,
Here.
Michael Lawson.
So we have a quorum. Mr. Haran, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please join. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Haran. Mr. Edwards, could you go over the ethics law for us, please?
Commissioners are reminded that if with respect to any matter or any person coming before the commission today, you have received a gift or loan, you have a pecuniary interest, you have a commitment in a private capacity such as a family, employment, business, or similar relationship, or you provided representation or counseling before an agency to a person or entity for compensation within the last year on a matter being considered, you must disclose that gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation at the time the matter is being considered. And you must furthermore abstain from deliberation or voting on the matter if it is clear that the gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation would materially affect the independence of judgment of a reasonable person. Commissioners are also reminded that under the Planning Commission rules, if you have had any contact outside this meeting with any persons interested in a matter coming before the commission today, you should disclose the nature of that contact at this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Mr. Webb, would you like to brief us on the appeal procedure,
With pleasure.
please?
Most decisions rendered by the Planning Commission are appealable to the Board of County Commissioners. If you disagree with the decision of the Planning Commission and you want to appeal its action, you may do so in writing within 10 calendar days from the date that the decision being appealed is assigned by the Planning Commission Chair and/or the Secretary of the Planning Commission, filed with the Secretary of the Planning Commission, and mailed to the original applicant in the proceedings being appealed in accordance with Washoe County Code. Please call the planning staff immediately at 328-6100 for information on the appeal procedure and the application fee. And I might note for Commission members of the audience that both public hearing items 9A and 9B are appealable items.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Now I'll call for general public comment. Katie, we got any public comment?
No public comment.
No public comment. I'd like to move for possible action to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve? Second.
Commissioner Domchek, who seconded?
Lawson.
No, Commissioner Lawson. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Possible action to approve the November 7th draft minutes.
Motion to approve? Second.
Commissioner Donchek makes the motion. Commissioner Lawson seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll move on to planning items. Bob, Mr. Webb.
Presentation and possible discussion on the 2017-2018 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan Update. Presentation will include an overview of the Truckee Meadows Regional Plan Update process to include the results from the recent survey, information on the contact with the consultant to assist in the update process, and the current timeline for the update process. The presenter is Kimberly Robinson, who's the Executive Director of the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to be here again. Bob, Nate, others as well. Thanks for the opportunity to chat a little bit about where we are in the regional plan update. So this evening, we're going to really briefly recap some of the tasks that we've actually accomplished in getting ready to do the update. I'm going to give you an update on our communication and engagement plan, which I think we're doing really well on. We'll see what you think. And also provide you some of our survey results. Our survey actually just closed on December 1st on Friday, and we had almost 2,000 participants. So it's pretty exciting. So let's start off with a summary of tasks. Now, the item you have in front of you is really a conversation around all the work that we've done to kind of prepare ourselves to bring our consultant on board for the regional plan update. We did a variety of work, whether it was around industrial lands, housing studies, doing work with Portland State University around Truckee Meadows service areas, looking at TOD, transit-oriented development corridors, and we reviewed other plans. We've certainly gone through, we did a comparison of what's in our plan and what's required by state statute. We want to be sure that we were clear about what needed to be in the plan. We've done issues identification work with the Planning Commission, the Regional Planning Commission, the Regional Planning Governing Board, and we have a staff working group from all 3 jurisdictions, including the school district and RTC. We developed some themes, some major subjects of interest. I have to say, what we really found is there's, I think, a lot of agreement about the subjects that we all want to talk about, and a real desire and interest in moving forward, and we feel really lucky about that. So where we've gotten to today is we are just anticipating completion on our sustainability baseline study. We recognize that sustainability, conversation around natural resources and our environment, isn't what we'd like it to be in terms of the plan that we currently have. So we commissioned this study to be able to provide us some additional information. We expect that to come in later this month. Now, let's chat a little bit about communication and engagement. So we put out the first of one of our surveys that we'll be putting out, and this was really around regional planning from the perspective of how do we want to grow in our community? And to do that, we did a lot of outreach to get folks engaged with us. As you can see, we had a variety of meetings, over 1,150 folks that we got to meet. I know I came and spoke to you around that. Certainly, we utilized email and social media. You can see some pretty big numbers in terms of our Facebook reach and our Twitter impressions. We're pretty pleased with those. You may have also gotten an insert in your Tumwa mailing, Tumwa bill. I know I got one. Encouraging folks to take the survey as well. We've done public service announcements. We've had columns in the newspapers, both the Sparks Tribune and the Reno Gazette-Journal. We've also attended a variety of meetings. I think at the beginning we said about 42. And disseminated flyers around that. We connected with the University of Nevada, Reno. So as you can see, a variety of ways that we're trying to get out there and get people to get engaged. And that was to really take our first survey and to sign up so that you can take our other surveys and also be on the newsletter list for what's happening in the future, and you can continue to be engaged. So as of, we see 1,845 participants as of close. On Friday, we were at 1,874, which is pretty exciting. We're just about that 2,400 in terms of written comments, and as you can see, almost 34,000 data points. We took a look at the results that we had. We wanted to break it down not only by age, but also in terms of the geographic location of where folks were located that were responding to the survey. And that's some of the information that you see up here. And we think that's pretty important to show that we did some really strong outreach and that we got a good amount of participation. So the top 3 themes that really popped out were infrastructure, accommodating growth, and natural environment. You can see accommodating growth and natural environment are really, really close to each other. We had a few other themes, including housing, regional identity. That's really how it broke out. We found some really interesting results. When we talked about how we should grow, we saw an interest in some increased in density in developed areas. We saw, in terms of a trade-off, the desire for more public transportation rather than more roads. What type of housing does our region need? We saw a slight preference in terms around housing with less land, but more access to service and amenities. And spending our public dollars came in pretty strongly around maintaining and improving existing services and facilities already in developed areas. Okay. We also took a look at the comments we received. So this is our qualitative analysis. And as you can see, the top 5 concerns based on our comments. First one was housing affordability. The next thing we get to is traffic, growing too quickly, schools, and some concern around sprawl. And the 2 gray boxes underneath each of them were the top 2 comments that we received in each of those. And you can see that we have, concerns around availability of housing, that our growth will outpace our infrastructure, and that we might diminish the rural identity, things like that. So we are going to use the results that we've received from the survey. We are going to be presenting those to the governing board, our governing board, next Thursday, and they're going to help craft part of the plan and inputs as we work on this. We have a weekly meeting, and I'm gesturing to Bob because Bob is on the committee with us in terms of the working group. And we are going to continue to work with Echo Northwest. They came and did a workshop with us just last week with the Regional Planning Commission. We talked about how that's going to go. We're expecting to have something together to be able to present in terms of policies, draft policies, probably around June of 2018, and we're looking at adoption October or so. I wanted to make sure to chat about how there's going to be continued engagement. So the first things first, the Regional Planning Commission definitely wants monthly updates, and so I hope that our participants on the Regional Planning Commission will also bring that information back to you. We are also available for occasional updates to jurisdictional planning commissions, which is part of what this evening is. Newsletters and surveys, please go to teamrpa.org and sign up. We'd love to hear from you. And we are always available for questions and comments. And of course, I couldn't close this out today without saying happy holidays. So that's my presentation. I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Mr. Chair, may I? First of all, Ms. Robinson, I've known you for a while, and I have to say, I'd like to comment on record that I think that your agency is one of the best-run public agencies I've ever had the privilege of working with. So thank you. I do have a question about the sustainability study and what the scope is. Could you please tell me briefly what the scope of that sustainability study is and what you hope to address?
Absolutely.
And also, who's your consulting firm?
Sure. So we have a draft in-house right now. We did an RFP process, I guess RFQ, in August. What we were really looking for was a good understanding of where the conversation is around sustainability right now in our region, and we also asked for opportunities. So what are some opportunities around specific items that we could potentially address? And I can tell you, having read the draft report, the urban heat island is identified as something. School locations is identified as an opportunity. So there's various opportunities in there. Additionally, we also have some scenarios developed to take a look at what the possibilities are in terms of how we grow and how that kind of pattern can affect some of the sustainability markers. So we are looking to have that finalized, if you will, this month, and at that point in time, certainly we can make it available to everybody. So thank you for your interest.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I would like to thank you very much, Kim, for the presentation. It's been a lot of work on your staff, and I think you guys are doing an outstanding job.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity, and have a great rest of your meeting.
Have a good Christmas.
Have a great Christmas.
Okay. Let's see, what were they? I guess item B, Bob, you want to?
With pleasure. This is discussion by the Planning Commission to provide staff with member availability for an upcoming joint Planning Commission meeting with the City of Reno Planning Commission relating to amendments to the Reno-Stead Corridor Joint Plan. We'll provide you with actually only one meeting date, time, and location for consideration. Mr. Lloyd is not here, so I'm filling in for him. And what I want to see is determine if the Planning Commission members, if you have any conflicts. So that date, by the way, is Wednesday, February 21st at 6 p.m. Again, that was Wednesday, February 21st at 6 p.m. in the Reno City Hall. If you know that if you have, again, February 21st, 6 p.m., Reno City Hall. If you know that you have any conflicts, you can either let me know now or during the meeting, or contact either myself or Mr. Lloyd. I already know Mr. Lloyd has contacted Sarah Chilicek. She is available at that time, so she should be there. If we can get the entire Planning Commission, that would be good, because again, it's a joint meeting. It will be under the auspices of the Reno Planning Commission, because they're the ones who are instituting the change, or their staff is. So that they'll sort of be running the meeting. They'll be doing the administrative portion of it, but you all will be there acting as a joint commission, talking with the Reno Planning Commissioners for the discussions on the joint plan. So that's it. Again, if they have conflicts, either let me know tonight or get a hold of myself or Mr. Lloyd. If not, February 21st, 6 p.m., Reno City Hall.
Anybody know that they've got?
I'm available.
I don't.
Available at this time?
I don't know. Okay. Then we'll move along to item 9, public hearings. Item 9A is continued from the November 7th Planning Commission meeting. Commissioner Webb, or Secretary Webb?
Abandonment case WAB 17-0004, Old Mount Rose Highway, for possible action, hearing, and discussion by the Washoe County Planning Commission to approve an abandonment of Washoe County's interest in plus or minus 25,451 square feet of right-of-way along Old Mount Rose Highway that is primarily used for private access. Julie Olander is the planner assigned to this case.
Let's see, does anybody have any disclosures by any of the commissioners? Ethics or ex parte communications? Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. Staff presentation by Julie Olander, planner.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I'm Julie Olander with Planning and Building Division. And this is a case that for an abandonment on Old Mount Rose Highway. And as you stated, it was continued from the November 7th meeting. So this is a request to abandon approximately 25,451 square feet of right-of-way along the old section of Mount Rose Highway that fronts 3 parcels. And here's showing you where this location is. There is 2 old Mount Rose highways. One is, as you're going up the hill, there's one turnoff, and then if you go past the Sky Tavern, there's another turnoff. They are somewhat connected, but the roads aren't really as well laid out as possible up there. Anyway, so the area that we're looking at terminates into the Forest Service property. Here's another overhead of it so you can sort of see how it's laid out. It's going to be narrower at one end, and then it widens out at the other end towards the terminus of the roadway. The 2 parcels on the west side of the roadway are zoned MDS, medium density suburban, and the parcel on the eastern side is zoned general rural GR. Currently, this is the property that's on the west side, and you see where that stake is, that's where the property line is. So by approving this abandonment, this would bring this property into conformance to meet the medium density setbacks for that property, which is 20 feet. And here's another view of that same property. You can see that the roadway is fairly, that area that's in the right-of-way is fairly overgrown, and that's primarily the area that is proposed to be abandoned. And this is going the other direction on the roadway towards the end of the road that terminates into the U.S. Forest Service land. This section of Old Mount Rose Highway was created with the Mount Rose subdivision in 1944, so this roadway's been there for a period of time. It was relinquished to the county in 1961 by NDOT. So this abandonment is being proposed to facilitate the construction of the house at the end of the roadway at the terminus. They are proposing to put in a hammerhead-type driveway turnaround. And as I stated, it will also help the properties on the west side, so they will meet their setbacks. NRS does allow Planning Commission to vacate easements. It's not going to impact the other properties because the abandonment is only along the 3 properties that I showed earlier, and the surrounding properties will still have the same access to their properties. 2 of the 7 reviewing agencies provided comments. The abutting property owners were noticed. Also, it was posted in the Gazette. I did not receive any public comments, and then abandonments are not noticed, are not reviewed by the CAB, so this did not go before the CAB. The conditions of approval are attached to your staff report. However, one of the reasons it got continued last month was because the Forest Service had some questions, so you have been handed out new updated conditions. And primarily, the areas that we're changing are under the Planning and Building Division, Condition B, we're adding public access. And then under the engineering section, we're adding this language, the 20-foot wide reciprocal access and public utility relocatable easement. And then it goes on to the same language that's there already. Then it goes and changes for the purpose of public access, including emergency and vegetation management from the terminus of Old Mount Rose Highway to the U.S. Forest Service parcel. And this is going to be reviewed by the U.S. Forest Service to make sure that it meets their compliance issue, their concerns too. So we've added this language just to allow an easement in there for the public that primarily the Forest Service has stated that there are people that use mountain bikes that come from Mount Rose Highway through this section and then continue on and but they can meet up with Mount Rose Highway farther down. So with that, I feel like, I believe that the findings can be met for the abandonment, and we do recommend approval with the amended, with the updated conditions of approval, and I leave up a possible motion for the abandonment, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Julie. Any commissioners have any question at this time?
Does this have, Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Haran?
does this have any impact on road maintenance at all?
According to engineering, it does not, so that would be, so at this point, we are hoping that this will improve the road maintenance because the applicant will improve that roadway at the end of Old Mount Rose Highway where this, the house is going to be constructed.
Okay, I think, does the applicant have a presentation?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Dave Snellgrove. I am the planning and right-of-way manager at CFA. Julie did a great job covering a lot of things. A lot of her pictures and exhibits were actually better than mine. Julia talked about the subdivision of the property. This is the original subdivision map from 1944, and it locates the parcels in question. And what we did is put the lot numbers, lots 43 and 44. They're actually uphill from lot 50. They don't really gain any primary access off of this roadway, and I'll explain that more as we get later into the presentation, which I promise won't be very long. This is just another map that kind of gives you a little bit more overall reference. It's very close to the Sky Tavern ski area. Over time, as Julie had mentioned, there are a lot of roads up there that are named Old Mount Rose Highway, and then we have the new Mount Rose Highway. Mount Rose Highway has taken some shifts and turns and adjustments and realignments over the many, many years. And this is one of those past historic alignments that really just ends when you get to the southern western end of what was lot 50 on this map. It goes into Forest Service land there. There is no continuation of a right-of-way. So it changes the Mount Rose Highway right-of-way. It originally served the Mount Rose Ski Tahoe, also known as Sky Tavern ski area. My understanding, my wife was born and raised here. I guess at one point it stopped, and a lot of you may have been born and raised here. That stopped at that point until they continued it up the hill farther. And this was one of those iterations. Lot 50, which is over on the right-hand side of that graphic, that is the one that started the question to see if we could get that abandoned, and I'll explain more why later. But that really ends at it's a dead-end road. It doesn't really have a turnaround or anything. It operates like a cul-de-sac without a bulb. So it terminates right here at the bottom, and I've pointed out. What I've done is highlighted on where the actual travel lane, that's kind of the edge of the remaining pavement that's out there. There was a comment about road maintenance earlier, and you can see Up on the right-hand side, or on the right-hand side of the image, the pavement, you can tell there was pavement there. It's pretty significantly deteriorated. These two pictures were actually taken on the Forest Service land. And I want to point out the picture on the bottom, there is a creek crossing that's up, and it starts to make a hairpin turn, and you can tell that there hasn't been any vehicle traffic through there in quite some time, or if there has, it's been very, very limited, not to disturb that vegetation. We understand, and we'd had conversations probably for 2 or 3 months with the Forest Service to make sure that there wasn't an existing right-of-way grant that they may have that we would need to perpetuate. And one of their comments came back that they really weren't interested in cutting off any access to the public lands, and we were in agreement with that. So we worked with them over the month and heard their additional comments and incorporated it into the modified condition. The right-of-way as it sits right now is really excessively wide. At the northern end, it's 100 feet in width. Really, it serves a couple parcels up there, and then when you get to the southern end, it's 60 feet wide. This photo over to the right actually shows where the Forest Service boundary is. That was taken just north of Mr. Otto's property, and that dashed line, it's well down the hill. So the width that's there definitely is not necessary. As I mentioned, when we came last month, the last thing I was planning on doing was taking continuance that night. However, about 3.5 hours prior to the hearing starting, I heard from the Forest Service, and one of the comments was, we don't have a right-of-way access or a right-of-way grant that continues up the hill. However, we would be against cutting off public access to the public lands. I said, okay, that's fine. So we were going to go ahead and allow and do an access easement across the property. And I talked to the planning staff, and they said, well, that could be a challenge because, let me go to this portion of code, Article 406, and this section 110.406.05 identifies where it starts out in the middle, all required yard setbacks are measured from the property line with the following exception. When an access easement traverses a property or a portion of a property and has a total width of 20 feet or more. So if we set it at 20 feet, what it goes on to say is that the front yard gets taken from that point, not from the property line. Talking to a couple of the senior members of staff last month, they identified, oh yeah, we've always needed to change that in code. However, that's what the black and white of code says. I was very concerned for my clients, on my client's behalf, in the fact that if you see where the travel lane exists right now, if you take a 30-foot setback, if we left the 20-foot easement approximately where that is, it really starts to push any housing pad that he'd be able to work on down the hill, which is exactly what we were trying to avoid in doing this abandonment request. The way that this abandonment's laid out is the sloped area that comes down from the uphill, which is the C-press and chunk parcels. They actually serve from the uphill road. That's where they get their primary access. They have no interest in owning any portion of the road down below them because they don't take access off it. So the reason that it kind of meanders around there a little bit, it follows what's called the TOA slope. It's where the slope stops and then it flattens out more into the roadway or the flatter section. That to give you a little history on why this looks a little different than you might see in some abandonments that just take a 50-50 split. This was a very early graphic that was drawn up by the engineer on the project, and all it did was set a housing pad, and this helps to illustrate some of the concerns that we had last month in terms of if we take a 30-foot setback off of where the road edge is, it takes that building pad and pushes it down the hill. So with that, I am available for any questions that you might have.
Any questions from the commission? Okay, I guess I'll open it up to public comment. Any public comment?
No public comment.
No public comment. Okay, I'll close the public comment then. Any commission questions of the staff, the applicant, or members of the public? Silence is golden. I'm going to close the public hearing. I guess now I could call for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Planning Commission approve, with the conditions included in the updated Exhibit A to this matter, abandonment case number WAB 17-004 for David M. Otto, having made all three findings in accordance with Washoe County Code Section 110.806.20.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I might, just to make sure the record was complete, if you could poll the commission and see if there was any discussion from the commission members prior to the motion
Is there any discussion on the motion?
or comments.
Okay.
And I assume, I just happen to have a whispering, I assume that included the updated Exhibit A.
Yes.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Doncheck and a second by Commissioner Lawson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay, we'll move on
Mr. Chair, can you
to...
announce the vote breakdown on that? Was it unanimous?
Pardon?
The vote breakdown, was it unanimous?
Was unanimous?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry. Wasn't in my script. Take a note, Mr. Secretary. Okay, let's move along to the next public hearing item is 9B, abandonment case number WAB 17-0005, Kitchener Court. Secretary Webb.
For possible action, hearing, and discussion by the Washoe Planning Commission to approve an abandonment of the entire length of Ketchikan Court, consisting of around 37,598 square feet of unimproved access easement from Butch Cassidy Drive to the terminus of Ketchikan Court. The planner is Julie Olander.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Do we have any disclosures by the commissioners? Any ethics or expertise communications? Being none, we'll move on. I'd like to open the public hearing. Julie Orlander, once again.
Good evening again, Commissioners. I'm Julie Olander with Planning and Building Division. This is abandonment for Ketchikan Court. It's located off Mount Rose, adjacent to Galena High School. Here's a sort of an overhead of what it looks like. The applicant's requesting to abandon the whole length of Ketchikan. This is a road, street that is unimproved. It was dedicated in 2014, however, the county has not accepted the roadway. The abandonment is for approximately 37,598 square feet, which is about 0.8 acres. The parcel is zoned medium density, MDS, and the surrounding properties are of the similar zoning. The request is to abandon the street and to combine, I'll go back to this picture. Oh, no, I'm going to go forward, sorry. It's to abandon the street, then combine the parcel, the lots that are off the street through a reversion of acreage, and then also to do a boundary line adjustment for the adjacent parcel and create a new parcel which would be 5.5 acres. And they're hoping to do this, and the applicant is doing this to create a parcel to construct a K through 8th grade public charter school. So here's that picture again. So it's going to be, there'll end up being two parcels, one at 5.6 acres and one at 5.5. But the applicant is only with the new parcel that's going to be 5.5. Again, NRS allows you to vacate easements. Also, again, the adjacent parcels are not negatively affected. The parcel that's involved here with this abandonment has not been developed, and the surrounding properties will maintain the same access because there's no change to theirs. I did receive 2 conditions out of the 10 reviewing agencies. I received 4 overall, 2 were no comments. I did not receive, the abutting agent, property owners were also noticed along with a posting in the Reno Gazette-Journal. I did not receive any public comments, and again, the CAB was not, does not review abandonments. I was able to meet all findings, which is showing in your staff report on page 10. And I would recommend approval for this with the, along with the conditions of approval, which are in Exhibit A. And I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for Julie?
Yes, please, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Haran?
When you speak of the boundary line adjustment, were those 2 pieces of property owned by the same party, or with the boundary line adjustment, were they exchanging different parcels with each other?
So we're the Julie Olander planner. So where the street is, that is owned by the applicant and also the lots, that whole area. The neighboring parcel is, I believe, owned by a separate property owner. However, they have, this is the end result plan, so they're still in the process of getting these somewhat approved. So before you right now, it's just the abandonment, but I wanted you to understand what the charter school is proposing to do so that you have an understanding why they're going forward with this abandonment.
Let me rephrase the question. Is the area that's highlighted in light green there, or I think it's green, I'm colorblind, so
It's okay, it's sort of a yellow.
yellow-green, is that the existing parcel? There's no, when you talk about a boundary line adjustment, it sounds like, they're changing the boundaries of the different sides of the property.
So currently, this is how the properties are laid out. In this view, you can't see quite the neighboring parcel to the west as clearly. So right now, what's in yellow or light green is owned by Landmark, and also where you can see the lot lines. That's all owned by the applicant. And then the neighboring parcel that they're in discussions with doing the boundary line adjustment with the neighboring parcel, and so then the neighboring parcel would lose a portion of it, and it would become one parcel at 5.
Okay, so that answers the question. So they are making that parcel larger at this
Yeah,
point?
they're making the parcel larger. So right now, you can see where the red line is.
Right.
And the lots off of Ketchikan. That line is going to be moved over to what all the yellow, light green color is going to be.
Okay, so do I understand then, Counselor or Mr. Webb, that the only thing that we are really talking about tonight is the abandonment? We're not talking about what may or may not happen or exchange of land, et cetera. It's just the abandonment.
Correct. The matter before the Planning Commission is strictly the request for the abandonment.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from Julie? Does the applicant have a presentation?
Chair, I believe that Commissioner Donchik had a question.
Just one point of clarification. You say 4 out of the 10 listed agencies provided comments on a recommendation. There's 2 listed, so the other one's just,
They were no comments.
Okay,
So,
just a statement.
I got comments from them, but they were no comments, so
Okay.
they were not included in the conditions of approval.
thank you for the clarification.
Francine, I didn't look that.
That's okay.
Okay, no applicant. Is there any public comment?
No public comment.
Was the applicant going to make a presentation? I'm sorry, Ms.
No,
Okay.
the applicant says no. So I'll bring it back to the commission for any questions of staff, the applicant, or members of the public.
I have a question for the applicant, actually.
And Mr. Chair, before this question, were there any disclosures? I don't remember if you brought that up at the beginning of the item. Were there any disclosures on this?
No.
Okay, thank you.
It's irrelevant, I guess, as far as the decision, but it's curiosity is what is the time frame of this, whatever you're going to do?
Commissioner Haran, for the record, Mike Draper with Argentum Partners representing Doral Academy, which is a charter school that Julie had referred to. The timing would be, we intend to be in school, to have the building built in time for the 2018-2019 school year. So students would be using the facility come August 1st of 2018. Indeed.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Any further discussion on the item? Being no further
I
discussion.
have,
I'm sure you do. Gary?
sorry.
Commissioner Haran?
Well, I guess from either for council or Director Webb, I think I understand that we can't talk about anything else, but, does this mean that the impact of this in the area is not something that we're ever going to be able to talk about?
The impact in the area that you can talk about is what impact removing this easement would have on the area.
Other than that, which means
I was giving you a yes.
I guess to further clarify, we're strictly addressing the abandonment this evening.
Yes,
I'm not going to try a third time to talk about it another way.
Okay.
Yeah, you need to decide whether abandoning this easement would cause a material adverse impact to the public.
Any other or further discussion? Are you sure? Okay. All discussion being done, I guess I'd call for a motion.
Chair,
Commissioner Donchek.
I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Planning Commission approve with the conditions included as Exhibit A to this matter, abandonment case number WAB 17-0005 for Ethos 3 Architecture, having made all three findings in accordance with Washoe County Code Section 110.806.20.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Lawson, I second.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Donchek, second by Commissioner Lawson. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Well, I guess that since that we are restricted to specifically looking at this street that we're going to abandon, I think the comments that were made, are sufficient to vote for the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Haran. So I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, we're going to move on to, wait a minute, hold on. I guess we'll move on to item 10, chair and commission items. Do you have any, Commissioner or Secretary Webb?
If I might, 10A is future agenda items, if any of the commission have any future agenda items. Seeing none, item 10B is request for information from staff.
I have a question. I presume the plan is that we will hear about the continued item from about 2 months ago, the 1st of January, since we had 125 days to deal with it?
And I believe what Commissioner Bruce is referring to is the Development Code Amendment on outdoor entertainment.
Yes,
Yes, correct. That will be before you and on your agenda on your January meeting.
thank you. Okay, any more requests from staff? All righty, Directors of Legal Counsel items, report on previous Planning Commission items?
I really have no updates because if you remember in our last meeting, it was right a light agenda and the one item got continued. However, I did want to report, speaking of Development Code amendments, that the Development Code amendments that you recommended approval on for minor deviations was one, and for the administrative permit time, remember this changing it to 65 days? Those were adopted by the board, and those two Development Code amendments became effective on December 8th. The other Development Code Amendment is going to be heard in January, and then you know that the Development Code Amendment on outdoor entertainment, you will hear in January. And sort of not an update along the same lines, you should have all received a PDF flyer of the department's holiday feast, or potluck as we term it, on Wednesday, December 20th, in the Mount Rose Slide Conference Room from 11:30 to 1:30. I encourage you, if you have the opportunity, please, anytime during that, stop by. Don't need to bring anything, just yourselves. Show up, say hello, and earlier better, so you get a better choice of whatever the feasty foods that we have.
Thank you, Secretary Webb. Any legal information or updates?
Nothing tonight,
Mr. Edwards.
Nothing tonight, Mr. Chair.
Okay, then move on to item 12, general public comment. Do we have any general public comment?
No public comment.
Then I would move on to ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you.
Great job, Chair.
And a happy holidays to all of you, and have a safe Merry Christmas and a Yuletide season.
Is it on?
Let go. Did I see that red light?
I'm, that's